A very warm welcome from the Ars Electronica Center to our series, A User Manual for Digital Humanists. Regular viewers might be familiar with this series and also know that we're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook, so please feel very welcomed also to join the discussions and comment on our social media channels by using the hashtag Digital Humanism. My name is Veronika Liebel, and I'm joined today by my colleague Andrew Newman, who is a producer in the field of European projects at Ars Electronica, especially focused also on research and education. We will also be joined later by a special guest today online, so we'd be happy again to have an interview also as part of today's session. This series is realized as part of the European Platform for Digital Humanism to re-establish our whole relationship with technologies and also how we use them. And clearly, this is a discussion which can't be held without also talking about learning and education. And this will be precisely also today's topic. In this series, we are quite keen actually on inviting partners and artists, all our networks in particular, to develop together with us, also to discuss together with us what the answers are. So we will not provide you with ready-made answers as part of this series, but we actually want you also to encourage to participate and join and develop together with us also the answers on learning and educational programs. And learning is also the key word, to be honest, for the place we are in here today. We are in the Ars Electronica labs, this hub at Ars Electronica for creativity, for technology, for science, and in particular also for learning. We are absolutely convinced that particularly vital for innovative progress is interdisciplinary cooperation. And today, research is driven really lively also by an exchange among researchers and definitely beyond the scientific discipline alone. It is often when we actually see these different knowledges collide, I would say, that we will also see new ways and possibilities, ideas and projects emerging from this. And exactly this nexus is something which builds a perfect and fruitful environment for our educational formats. Educational programs have long since left actually behind the confines of the classroom, especially in STEAM education. To remind us, STEAM actually stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. For example, coder dojos or museums like this one, science centers, think tanks, also makerspaces, and so many other actors apply their expertise also to develop interdisciplinary learning programs for young people to get a kind of 21st century skill set needed also today. So we will actually focus on these educational programs of Ars Electronica, very much also on our European funded programs today and projects under Horizon 2020 and also Erasmus+. And we want to discuss also how to foster critical thinking and digital literacy, how to create learning environments outside the classroom, in particular also for those who might not have the access otherwise. And we certainly want to also highlight the role of arts and creativity in this whole framework. For this, I want actually to hand over to my colleague Andrew, who is going to introduce a couple of first projects.
Thanks, Veronika. So yes, obviously, as we've heard, education is one of the core aspects of the European Platform for Digital Humanism. This, of course, should be no surprise. Education has always been fundamental to what we historically understand as humanism. From Cicero's concept of humanitas, an educational and political ideal, it was something that was central to the Italian Renaissance. The ultimate goal, and it was pursued somewhat evangelically, was to reach and fulfill the grandest human potential. So this is something we can think about today as we discuss what digital humanism is and what is the grandest human potential we can sort of create in this technological world. So what Cicero was emphasizing with his idea of humanism were qualities such as understanding, benevolence, compassion, mercy, fortitude, judgment, prudence, eloquence, and responsibility. It was hoped that this could be achieved through education and like a transfiguration of culture, an education that was made up of social critique, critical thinking, and rethinking of what history is. But not only that, it was also made up of social models, dreaming up utopias, thinking of what kind of future we want, how we want to create our world. So this knowledge that they were learning during the Renaissance wasn't only theoretical, it was applied. It was meant to be applied. Utopias weren't meant to be dreamt up only, but also built. And just as it was considered a bit backwards back then to act with no insight, it was also considered completely vulgar to have insight and not act. So when we talk about education, we talk about knowing why, but we also need to emphasize knowing how. And today, when we talk about digital humanism, we need to know how to use digital technologies. This is talked about all over the place. STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, is up there everywhere with politicians sort of emphasizing that we need to know these skills. The next generation need to know these skills. Usually, it's talking about growing the economy. But there's something more to this. We need to know these tools because these are the tools of how we can shape our future. So, there's something fundamental that's missing from this idea of STEM, and that is art and the arts. So to hop back to the Renaissance, we just need to look at that innovator and engineer, the sort of stereotypical Renaissance person, Leonardo da Vinci, that we can look at how art thinking can a holistic way of understanding complex connections and can act as a translator between different communities of knowledge. By including art, STEM evolves to STEAM education and ensures that there is an interdisciplinary switchboard actively integrating different approaches to solving the same problems we face today. One of the projects we're working on at the European Platform for Digital Humanism is STEAM Inc. It's a Erasmus Plus Knowledge Partnership, and it's made up of researchers and academics and lecturers and teachers from STEAM House at Birmingham City University, the Art and Science program at Central St. Martin's, Science Gallery at Trinity College, Aalto University, TU Dresden, and the University of Amsterdam. We're developing, testing, and sharing best practice methods of STEAM education, engagement, and policy. The focus of the project is predominantly on higher education, but the methods could be applied to other levels of education and also beyond, to business, to industry, to just making. One method that I'm going to highlight today is from our friends at the Art and Science program at Central St. Martin's, and it's part of their master's degree program. It's a course, and a course that's called Method, Material, and Matter, and it uses the force connections creative thinking technique. So force connections is about connecting, using the brain's ability to sort of connect disparate things, weird things, words, objects, feelings, and ideas, and to use this new language to sort of think differently. In the exercise, students create lists of 3 different things. Subject matter, i.e. sort of AI ethics, blockchain applications, digital humanism, vaccine misinformation. Methods, these could be like painting, singing, teaching, preaching, and materials like stone, video, MRIs, or paper, and more. So then out of these lists that the students create, an item is randomly selected from each of them. And this is going to be the student's project. So for instance, you could have a student dancing about the blockchain using stone. And so this is quite an odd way of assigning your project for the semester, but this method kind of is aimed to agenda creative strategies for ideation, research, experimentation, encourage agile thinking of possible connections between disparate elements, explore different disciplinary methods and approaches, and embrace chance, celebrate risk, and focus on the process rather than the outcome. By encouraging this sort of creative thinking, STEAM education allows students to learn to consider varied perspectives, to look at things differently and to look at things from someone else's perspective. Being able to identify points of common ground that you wouldn't usually be able to find. These competencies, this sort of creative thinking, this art thinking, is something that can be combined to all other competencies. Building a bridge, developing a new blockchain application, all sorts of applications of actually creating and changing the world we live in can benefit from learning to think with art thinking and learning through STEAM education. So we'll be publishing these methods later on in the year. You can check out the blog, Ars Electronica blog, to keep up to date, or sign up to our newsletter. And you can find out all the different sort of methods and approaches that are being developed from our European partners. But if you want to sort of engage with this sort of art-led education now, you can actually sort of sign up to some stuff we're doing at Ars Electronica. And I'll cross over to Veronica to discuss this.
Absolutely. As you can imagine, art-led education plays a really huge role here at Ars Electronica, not only in our European projects, but very much in everything we do here at Ars Electronica. And to remind us also, learning can take place in so many different environments, in different settings, in different places. While formal learning experiences usually take place in schools, in classrooms, in universities, non-formal learning experience can happen in a variety of different placings and settings, such as this museum here or the labs we are in, but so many other different places as well. For both the formal as well as the non-formal learning forms, we are offering a wide variety of different programs as part of our home delivery services to schools, to families, to universities, but also to companies, individuals, and public organizations. During the last month in particular, to be honest, we have not only adjusted the program due to the pandemic, but we actually took this as a reason to completely redevelop also our whole program of online and hybrid offers. If you're interested, I would highly recommend you also to have a look into our website. We have detailed all the different types of sessions we make available currently, and we're busy running them, of course, a couple of times a week, offering really a diverse program of courses and workshops to very many different stakeholders. Let's have a look into the trailer and give you also a bit of understanding and perspective of how these sessions are produced and presented.
As Veronica discussed, we can find education in all sorts of different locations. It doesn't happen only in universities or in schools. And one of the projects that we're working on with our European partners is the Open Science Hub network. And this is focused on an idea of education which is called open schooling. So the Open Science Hub network is a consortium of partners across Europe and engages local stakeholders in the community to discuss problems that are being faced in the community and by the young people today. It's a tool for tackling local challenges and contributing to sustainable development. And our partners include Onlefay in Switzerland, the University of Leiden in the Netherlands, the municipality of Figueira de Castelo Rodrigo in Portugal, Impact Hub Siracusa in Italy, Science in Czech Republic, and also Science Gallery, Trinity College, and Psycho in Greece. OSHub follows the idea of open schooling, as I said. It's where schools, in cooperation with other stakeholders, become an agent of community, well-being, Families are encouraged to become real partners. Other cultural partners are also engaged to get involved. Industries engaged, civil enterprise, the actual sort of council to get involved in the school education and to have a type of formal and non-formal education that brings in the real world. Local OS hubs work as the mediators in each of these communities, positioning schools as agents for collaboration. And OS hubs support schools identifying specific needs and implementing the different phases of the open school processes, namely through co-development and co-creation of research and innovation projects and activities. OS hubs foster the development and sustaining of local networks and strategies for schools and community, and basically they just open the doors for everyone to get involved. And by getting involved, we at Ars Electronica are touring our Create Your World tours to schools and bringing in sort of art-led STEM thinking and education to all the different schools. It's been a very trying and difficult time because we're usually running these workshops in a very hand-on and applied way, and we had to completely readapt to this new world that we're living in of doing things online. And it's also been very hard for the students also working online, and especially the teachers. So OS hubs are kind of supposed to be there to provide support, to bring in the larger community and to offer sort of the expertise that we have here. And especially like Ars Electronica, we bring in our expertise to sort of rethink how technology could work and also to inspire children to actually get involved in working with STEM technologies in a fun and sort of creative way. What we've got actually, we've got a video from all of our partners and they're discussing in their national languages what open schooling is. Maybe they can say it a little bit more succinctly than I can. So we'll watch that video now.
Open scholing is kwaliteitsonderwijs voor ieder kind. Wij zien onderwijs als maatwerk. Het moet worden afgestemd op het leertempo, de nieuwsgierigheid en de belangstelling van ieder kind. Open scholing is samenwerken aan een gemeenschappelijk doel, waarbij de krachten van verschillende partners worden gebundeld om samen iets moois te creëren.
Open schooling is empowering students, teachers and families to make positive changes in society through collaborative relationships that extend beyond school walls and to enable lifelong learning for all.
Open schooling è la possibilità di creare impatto, che è parte della nostra missione. È la capacità di connettere comunità, famiglie e territori per iniziare processi di apprendimento reciproco tra studenti, famiglie e insegnanti, al fine di incoraggiare la nascita di network e relazioni.
L'open schooling est une approche fondée sur des principes participatifs et communautaires. Tout au long du processus, les écoles, les parties prenantes, les partenaires locaux et les communautés travailleront conjointement pour pouvoir identifier des besoins locaux et les transformer en projets de recherche et d'innovation.
Open Schooling gibt jungen Menschen die Möglichkeit, für Probleme, mit denen wir heute konfrontiert sind, reale Lösungen zu erarbeiten. Es inspiriert sie für Create Your World.
L'enseignement ouvert, c'est la possibilité pour les écoles, collèges et lycées de faire des projets avec des partenaires extérieurs. C'est faire des projets avec les jeunes et les habitants d'un quartier, c'est les aider à se réapproprier leur environnement proche.
Nous allons accompagner des projets de culture scientifique qui vont répondre à des besoins mis en avant par les jeunes et leurs familles. Avec eux, on va prototyper des solutions, les fabriquer, les documenter et les partager sur le modèle des Fab Labs.
Open schooling, otevřené vzdělávání, to je sdílení zkušeností, nápadů a přístupu k celoživotnímu učení se. Je to také způsob, jak propojit lidi a vést je ke spolupráci na zajímavých tématech nebo i na problémech, které v našem životě potkáváme.
Escola aberta é co-criar experiências de aprendizagem com significado entre as escolas e as suas comunidades locais, através do desenvolvimento de projetos focados em desafios localmente relevantes, alinhados com as necessidades e o contexto da escola.
Το open schooling είναι μια ευκαιρία για την εκπαιδευτική κοινότητα να έρθει σε επαφή με την τοπική κοινωνία, το πανεπιστήμιο, την τοπική αυτοδιοίκηση και άλλους φορείς, έτσι ώστε να συνεργαστούν, να ανταλλάξουν ιδέες, να αναδείξουν και να επιλύσουν τοπικά θέματα της Λίμνου με τη βοήθεια της επιστήμης και της τεχνολογίας.
So one of the key aspects of the OS Hub network, obviously, is to create a network, but we're also creating educational resources, open educational resources, that hopefully can sort of sustain beyond the project's time frame and be accessible for teachers, students, other cultural institutions, maker spaces to work with. This OS Hub blueprint is currently available on our website, oshub.network, but you can also find it updated regularly because it's a work in progress, and everything we're releasing under open licenses. So creating resources and sharing knowledge is also a key aspect of one of our other projects, another Erasmus Plus project called Creative School. In this project, a group of partners across Europe are creating open educational resources that is using the expertise from their cultural archives, from their museums, from, for instance, what we have here at the Ars Electronica Center. The Creative School project is there to adapt experience and knowledge of the cultural sector in a formal and non-formal educational setting. It's there to help teachers and students to think creatively and critically. One of the focuses that we're working on in our educational resource is on digital literacy and this sort of critical sort of thinking about how humans play a role in our digital world. So why should cultural institutions get involved in formal educational settings? So reform of the school curricula in Europe is undergoing radical change. Teachers and students are encouraged to think and learn in ways that have not been present, like historically, for quite some time, or at all. They have to think creatively. They have to adapt quickly. This has been all the more clear throughout the COVID crisis. And this creative thinking and adaptability is something that we can learn through the resources that we have at the cultural institutions. We can learn from artists, we can learn from history, we can learn from the community. And some of our partners, for instance, are running different educational resources, and these will also be available publicly. It's based on a previous project called the Making Museum, and this also has a whole lot of educational resources that are available online. So as we live in increasingly digital lives, with accessible personalized experiences and services, we need to also adapt how museums provide these services. As Veronica said earlier, this is something that we're doing at the moment with our home delivery services. But the project also intends to demonstrate to other cultural institutions how this new language can be effectively applied in the educational environment. So teachers and students or any other educational community can create and learn from the benefits of the project. So I'm now going to pass over to Veronica to discuss another sort of non-formal educational project and how we can learn from cultural institutions, makerspaces, and more.
Yeah. Well, or maybe even the project which helped us at Ars Electronica quite extensively to gain also an understanding how learners perceive, in particular science learning, is System 2020. It frankly also triggered our interest in many of the projects Andrew already introduced, and it opened also our interest in particular research projects in Ars Electronica. System 2020 is a Horizon 2020 funded project exploring science learning outside the classroom in 19 different European countries. System 2020 did also a really extensive research on the various practices out there currently in Europe and tried to understand what they are all doing out there, what the practices are, what the operations are around non-formal science learning. It aims to tackle scientific literacy and also STEAM education for children and teenagers across Europe. And by including learners from minorities, from economically disadvantaged and also migrant communities, it not only focuses on the organizational perspectives, but actually on the learners' individual perspectives. The project is coordinated by Science Gallery Dublin, a very dear partner of Ars Electronica, whom we not only share this System 2020 project with, but actually really so many different kinds of projects. That's why I am also really thrilled to have the principal investigator of System 2020, Muriel Hurley, here with us today as a guest speaker and have a short interview with her today. Before we jump directly into the interview, I would actually like to have the chance to introduce her. Dr. Muriel Hurley has 15 years experience in scientific research education and public engagement with science. Following a PhD in astronomy, she obtained a teaching qualification and worked as a science and mathematics teacher in Ireland and Australia. She joined Science Gallery at Trinity College Dublin in 2016 as a European Projects Coordinator, where she later held also the role of Head of Research and Learning. Currently, she is a research fellow in the School of Education, Trinity College Dublin, with her research really focusing on public engagement with science and art and informal and non-formal STEM learning. Thank you so much for being with us today, Muriel. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Veronica. It's lovely to be with you. And I think, as you mentioned, we've been working together for a really long time. So I think as soon as I joined Science Gallery Dublin, you were one of the first international partners that I got to meet.
Yeah, I think we've met actually back in 2015 or 16, also for the very first time, and then also quickly jumped into System 2020 actually, and you were one of the minds behind the visions and also the motivation why System 2020 was developed, and also why to bring in so many different partners across Europe on board to work together collectively on a project on science learning outside of the classroom. Maybe you want to tell us a bit more what your specific motivations were behind that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think we came together with a number of organizations with similar approaches to learning. So with yourselves, Ars Electronica, and a few other core partners like VAG in Amsterdam and Aalto University, who were mentioned earlier as also part of the STEAMing project, and also Excite, the European Network of Science Centres and Museums. And I think really this core group, we shared a lot of similar ideas. We were all working at this intersection of art and science and thinking about learning in a transdisciplinary way. But we really recognized that there was such a huge variety across Europe and across the world in how science learning was happening. And we saw the power of data and visualization and thought that that really could be a great approach to kind of map out what was going on and try to collect together the different practices, the different ways young people learn. And I think the central idea was around the sharing of ideas and the sharing of practices and around networking. And then I think for all of us, you know, we were already working at delivering programs for young people, supporting young people to learn through their interests. But for us, I think there was a need to move beyond the basics, and in particular around issues of equity. So we were all able to provide programs that would work for most young people, but we were all aware that there were people who were missing. There were groups that we weren't reaching. You know, we were doing things in our own spaces, but maybe not going out into the communities. And so we really wanted to hold up a lens to that and try to examine how we could develop more equitable practices and how we could work together in a participatory way. And so that's where I think the idea of really centering the learners in the project came from. And a big part of the project was not to create for young people, but to create with young people, to talk to young people and to listen to young people. And I think that really has managed to come through all the way through this project. We're just coming up to the very end of our 3 years now.
You mentioned actually something in particular also absolutely relevant for Ars Electronica, this term of sharing ideas in non-formal learning education. I think this is something Ars Electronica has been always part of this ecosystem, and of course also with all many or the different variety of regional stakeholders here. embedded into different kinds of learning practices, but also peer-to-peer education, and kids and artists in particular joined Ars Electronica since many, many years in developing our educational programs. But system really helped us also to systematically collect the different kinds of practices, also showcase to each of the partners what everyone else is doing, and look a bit beyond also the borders of our region and see what, for example, is done in Ireland, or what is done in the Netherlands currently. And this was, in my point of view, also a fantastic outcome of the project, and it resulted in a gigantic map which was produced by all of the partners, also collecting these different kinds of perspectives. Maybe you want to tell a bit about that and the outcomes, and also actually practically how people can find the map.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was part of the motivation of developing such a big consortium to work on this project, because it's really a crowdsourced map. So each of the 19 partners gathered together the information in their country on the non-formal learning. So not just ones that connect art and science, but ones that are more focused on science, ones that integrate all the STEM disciplines, and then also the ones that work with artists and have this art thinking approach to learning. So the map itself is hosted online. At the moment, we've got just over 1,450 organizations, which I think is a huge achievement in terms of mapping the landscape. We asked for quite a lot of information from people when they were filling this in, and it may have seemed like a little bit of a chore, but we really have gathered such a wealth of information. So we have information about the organizations, the kind of practical stuff like where they are, their website, things like how much it costs to enter, what age group it's targeted at. And then we have another section that's a little bit more detailed, and that's around the activities offered by an organization. So that might be things like regular workshops, annual festivals, maker clubs, fab labs. And for those, again, gathering the practical information, but we really went into detail here, and we asked things like the pedagogical approach. We asked things like how involved young people are in the decision-making and the planning. We asked things like, what were the skills that this learning experience or activity would hope to develop in a young person? And so all of that data is available to download. So it can be used kind of by a range of people. Again, as you mentioned, practitioners wanting to see what else is going on in their country, wanting to see what's going on worldwide. You can also map out the connections between organizations. So if someone clicked on Science Gallery Dublin, they would see a link with Ars Electronica in Austria and with all our other partners across Europe. And also that it can be useful just to explore what's out there, look at the different kinds of pedagogical approaches. It can also be interesting for researchers. So it's quite a huge data set and it's openly available. And looking at that, for example, one of the things I found quite interesting was that of all the skills that these activities promote, creativity came out as number one, teamwork came out as number two. And those are both coming out ahead of scientific literacy. So, you know, we're really seeing that the non-formal learning space is really conscious of trying to promote creativity in science learning. It's also a really great way to make links with different organizations. So one of our partners, Kršnikova Institute in Slovenia, mentioned that in the process of campaigning for the map in their country, they developed new relationships with organizations in the country that they had never worked with before, and now had developed a relationship in which they're applying for funding for new projects together. So lots of opportunities for different people to use it. And I guess then the fundamental thing as well for young people, learning outside of school is really about following your interests. And if a young person in school demonstrates an interest in, for example, coding, this map could be a tool for a teacher to say, well, hey, you're really into coding. Why don't we go and see what's out there in your country for you to join, or even internationally now, because so much is available online. Likewise, if some young people come and spend some time learning in Science Gallery Dublin, we as facilitators may recognize like, oh, you're interested in this thing and it's beyond what we offer in our program, but we can link you with another organization. So really brokering connections for young people.
Yeah, I absolutely recommend, to be honest, if you're a practitioner, if you're a teacher, if you are a researcher, if you're interested in these types of programs and formats, look into the map. It's really a fantastic research and resource. But as Muriel said at the very beginning, System 2020 is not only about a project for organizations and for researchers, but very much also for the learners themselves. And the project did a fantastic job in actually presenting also the perspective from learners in different kinds of projects. And Muriel, for me, it would be extremely interesting also to hear from your side, given the research scope of 3 years now, what would you say, how do young people experience science learning, and how is science learning also relevant to them?
Very big question, and I'm sure we can't say that we have the comprehensive answers, but it's been really interesting working with the partners that we have and the young people that they work with to try to dig into that question a little bit deeper. We took a couple of approaches to getting the voices from young people, bringing them to the fore. So one thing we tried to do was to look at these skills that you mentioned that are common and part of science learning outside the classroom, and in particular in the sort of art, science or STEAM approaches that our partners use, and to explore the skills. So to look at things like creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and not just for us to look and say, okay, you're doing creativity, tick, but actually to ask the young people to reflect on it themselves and to reflect on their own learning and to do that repeatedly over time. So to get used to this idea of sort of metacognition, of thinking about their own learning. And it's challenging. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but we did manage to sort of build that process in and try to see, people increasing their creativity, but increasing how they felt about their own competence in creativity, for example. Or in their confidence in carrying out a task or a project. So learning how to learn and learning how to think about the skills and competence is kind of inherent in this transdisciplinary approach to learning. So I think that's been really interesting for us to see. There's so much more work to be done on it. And I'm sure we'll all be working together on this for a very long time before we've got it all figured out. Another approach that we took to hearing from young people was really in looking for new ways to evaluate our programs. So I think evaluation is really, it's such a thorny issue, and we as practitioners, there's a lot of pressure on us, especially from funders, to kind of prove the worth of what we deliver, to engage young people and then to say, yes, we did it. It's, here's the proof. And I think evaluation is an art and a science in itself, and it's thorny. So a lot of times evaluation, especially for young people, may have involved surveys. And to be honest, you might have done the greatest workshop in the world, and then you're asked to sit down and do a survey, and it's boring. So we really wanted to think about different ways of approaching that. And one of the methods that we settled on was asking young people to create zines. So zines are little handmade booklets. And in these, we asked them to kind of reflect on their process, and we scaffolded it and framed it with some questions so that they weren't completely just left to create, but that they were kind of asked to think along a few different lines. But really, we were asking them to create something for themselves, something that they could keep as a memento of what they had done, that would, capture their thoughts and their feelings on the issues and topics that they were being asked to explore. But then for us also provide us with some indication into the learning that was happening, the way they felt about things. So it was kind of a multifaceted tool, and the process of making a zine in itself is quite an art science approach. It asks you to use different materials, to be creative, but also to structure your thinking. So I think it's been a really interesting process and something that we're excited to keep using and trialing and bringing further.
Absolutely. Also from my side, to be honest, my very favorite two outcomes among many of System 2020, these scenes and also the learner perspectives, video documentation, video interviews with learners on a very reflective way, but also fun way to get an understanding of how different people also perceive learning. And this we will actually present at the very end of the session a learner's perspective from the 2019 Ars Electronica Festival, so you will also have a glimpse of this. As a very last question to you, because we are actually in also our format of collecting ideas and projects for this user manual for digital humanists. And actions from and with and for young practitioners are, of course, a dominant and extremely important priority for us. So with all your experience from System 2020, what would be your take on how to become also a responsible digital citizen?
Yeah, it's so exciting to think about this kind of stuff. I think I mentioned that for System 2020, we really wanted to get beyond the process of us as organizations dictating how and what young people should learn. And one of the great outcomes as well, so we've had so many different great outcomes, but one of them has been kind of using participatory methods to get to the results that we have. So in particular, we sort of defined all the challenges facing our field in a huge participatory session with project partners, each project partner also bringing along stakeholders from their country. So we all met new people that we weren't already working with, and then young people. So actually, as partners, we brought young people together with all of us, and we all shared ideas that all collectively came into what became kind of the core of the project research. And that was amazing. Like, I was sitting at a table with a young person from the Netherlands and having conversations with them alongside practitioners from Greece and all different, so I think us as organizations, we've shifted our thinking, and we really are starting to put young people at the center of what we do. It's too easy to be in your own bubble and to forget about who we're working for and with. And so I think one tip for me is, for young people, don't underestimate your power and your agency. You have, your opinions, your voice, it matters and it will be heard. And it's just about finding the opportunities and the right like-minded people to work with. But you have so much power and agency. So explore widely, be curious, but be skeptical. Play with materials, play with digital materials, play with physical materials, bring it all together. And the world is yours.
Absolutely, the world is yours, and we'd be happy to also explore this world together with you here in the Ars Electronica Center, and also cordially invite you again, of course, to Create Your World, our festival, staged again in September, where really all of you can also get a sense of what we're talking about today. Thank you so much, Muriel, for this fantastic interview. It was really lovely to have you. It's always fantastic to work with you, to be honest. And I hope that there will be many, many future projects coming up also with you. That already leads us somehow to the end of this session, right, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's come to the end. I would also like to thank Muriel, and especially, I don't think we can come to the end of a European projects discussion on education without discussing what we learn from our European partners, not only on our educational projects, but on all of our projects. So I'd also like to thank all of our European partners for helping us learn more from everyone's ideas. So we'll be coming back in a month again with another episode. We'll be focusing on the Starts Prize and the new Starts Prize for Digital Humanism. So hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you for joining us.
Before we say goodbye, we actually would like to leave you with a little inspiration, I would say, to discover the world and also be open to learn something new every single day, independent of your age, by the way. So to close this session, we'll present now a 6 minutes video, as I said, an artistic documentary, I would even say, and a perspective from a learner at Create Your World Festival in 2019. With this, goodbye and hope to see you soon. Or I get signs from my technical team that we do have a couple of technical problems. The video is on YouTube anyway, so I hope we will otherwise manage to share a link in the comments, so you have the possibility also to have this fantastic view of a grandpa discovering the U19 Festival, the Create Your World Festival in 2019, exploring and thriving through Post City, our formal festival venue. And he discovered all different kinds of projects and programs through the lens also, and with the help of all the practitioners there in the format. So this is going to be presented now. And with that, I leave you now finally and say goodbye. Thank you.
Lieber Opa, komm einen Tag in meine Welt. Alles Gute zum Geburtstag, Emily.
Communicate. Aha.
messen.
Für mich?
Der Zugang von den Kindern zu diesem Begriff Coding, war da eine Berührungsangst oder war das, wir lernen jetzt verschiedene Pflanzen zu benennen?
Also ähnlich. Also wenn man sich die Videos anschaut oben, kann man sehen, dass die Kinder alle lachen dabei. Das heißt, wir haben eigentlich angefangen aus ihrem Leben mit Bewegungsmustern und die sind schon langsam mit Algorithmen umgewandelt und zwar so, dass es auch Sechsjährige verstehen können. Also rein über Zeichensprache, das war noch vor Lese- und Schreibwerk und hat ihnen eigentlich Spaß gemacht. Im Grunde genommen, wenn man das Foto sieht, hat das Mädel da ein Programm geschrieben.
Wir messen deine Gehirnströme. Durch ein spezielles Verfahren haben wir dein Innerstes decoded. Alles ist entschlüsselt, das ist die Zukunft. Wir haben dich entschlüsselt.